Hey, everybody, this is Katie Collins with the ISA MAPS coaching program. I am excited to talk to you all today. First, let me say that I am suffering from a bit of a head cold, so I apologize for any sneezing and just sounding overall congested. Okay, so today's webinar, we're going to be talking about follow-up, the important key features of creating a follow-up system and why it's so important. So what I thought I would dive into first is how we know follow-up works in the first place. And if you guys have not heard of this study that I'm about to quote, I really strongly encourage you guys to Google it. It's a study done by the Harvard Business Review that talks about best practices for lead response and lead management. And it's something that we have actually printed out and put up in our offices at the Heil Group in Austin, Texas, just to help remind us that the data supports the activity that we're doing every day so that we don't become discouraged. So, in following up with people, it's really important to do it in a strategic way. First, what I'll tell you is there are better times of the day to call people and better days of the week. So for call times, the Harvard Business Review says that the best contact rate happens between 8 and 9 a.m. and then again between 4 and 6 p.m. So when you start to make follow-up attempts for leads, if you haven't been successful yet in getting a lead on the phone, it might benefit you to change the time of day in which you're calling them. Okay, so I just want you to think about that. The other thing that the Harvard Business Review tells us is that the best days of the week to make calls to get a high contact rate are Wednesday and Thursday. Now they don't have any data on the weekends. I would surmise it's probably just as great, honestly, especially if you call in the morning. But what we know is, for example, on Thursday, you are 100% more likely to actually get calls answered than you would on a Tuesday. Tuesday is actually the worst day of the week. Now, in telling you this, I don't want you guys to say, "Well, that's it. I'm never making calls on Tuesday again." That's not the point. The point here is you want to be consistent and you want to be strategic, which means if you're not getting somebody to answer the phone and you're calling them at the same time and date every week, it might benefit you to change it up a bit. Okay. So Wednesdays and Thursdays are the highest contact rate days. Now, there's another thing that the Harvard Business Review study shows us, and it's really directed towards follow-up, and it's just, in my opinion, it's a game changer in how I started viewing follow-up. If you're anything like me and you've made 2 call attempts to somebody and they haven't answered, you start to think that you're going to be bothering them, that you're annoying them, that you're being too aggressive, that you don't want to turn them off, right? Well, what the Harvard Business Review tells us is that 90% answer at call attempt number 6. Call number 6, okay? So if you're going to develop a follow-up program to call your leads, we tell everybody you want to call at least 6 times, at least. And it's because of this study is why we have that number in there. So now that I know that 90% answer at call attempt number 6, it gives me a lot more confidence in making my calls, and my own personal experience has helped me stay the course. For those of you who haven't developed a successful follow-up program or might be newer, or you're leading a team and they're saying, I don't want to call, I feel like I'm bothering them, I feel like I'm bugging them. Well, I just think of all the times in which I've made calls and called past 6 times even, and when they finally answer the phone, they thank me. They say, I really appreciate you following up with me. I haven't been able to get in touch with you. I've been super busy. But yes, I am still interested. So I recognize that I'm not actually harassing these people, that there's a benefit to me calling them. And here's the deal. If I'm calling people and they don't want me to call them, I want to leave a voicemail that's going to encourage them to call me back and tell me one way or another if they're interested in real estate, right? It would benefit me greatly if you would just tell me you don't want me to call you anymore, that you're no longer looking to buy a house, that your credit's gone down the crapper. And that way I could take you off my call list, right? So even getting a rejection is something that I'm still welcoming because at least it allows me to work more strategically and actually work the leads that are true leads. So there's kind of a mindset shift there when once you do it for a while and you actually have good conversations with people that you've been reaching out to, it does help. Okay, so the really, really interesting thing about the study too shows that less than over 80% of agents will not make a call attempt past the second call, right? It's just astounding how many do not call past the second call. The biggest drop off happens after the third call, with less than 10% will actually call past call number 3. And like I said earlier, we know that 90% answer at call number 6. So another way that we look at this data is if we're making calls and we're looking for contacts, right? We want them to actually talk to us. What we've learned from these statistics, what this study has shown us is that over 30% of leads are never contacted at all. I want you to let that sink in for a moment here. Over 30%. 30%. I know some of us right now are still thinking that's not a big number. Just think if 30% of your commission was gone, right? To help you give perspective on what 30% looks like. Over 30% of leads are never contacted at all. If you just make a few more call attempts, you will experience 70% more contacts. Okay. So that's kind of the foundation for why we believe in follow-up so adamantly. And I have to again encourage you guys to Google the Harvard Business Review. It's an amazing study for best practices in calling and lead management. And like I said, we have it printed out and have it in our office to help encourage all of our agents. Okay, so with the Harvard Business Review understood and hopefully gets your wheels turning about thinking how important follow-up is, here are a couple of tips that we have to help you with your follow-up. Number 1 is make it easy. That's our number 1 tip. Make it easy. Excuse me. So how do you make it easy? Well, you got to slow down to speed up. The first thing that I would do is I would be looking at my database, looking at my pipeline, and asking myself, first of all, does everyone in here, everyone in this database that I'm working, are they being followed up with? Should I be treating them all equally? Probably not, right? There are some leads you've had in there that have never answered the phone. There's some leads that you're actually talking to, right? So for us, what we did to make things easier is we sat down, we analyzed our pipeline, we recognized that different categories need to be treated differently, and we created templates for them. So for example, one of our categories is the nurture category. And that's somebody that's answered the phone, has told us that they're interested in selling, they're motivated, the timeline's within 12 months, right? We put a drip on them and we are calling them when they direct us to call them back. So they're really, really easy to follow up with because they say, hey, yeah, Katie, give me a call back in 6 weeks, right? Piece of pie, piece of cake, easy, right? The ones that make it more challenging are the ones that never answer the phone in the first place. The ones that we start to self-doubt and convince ourselves, oh, I'm bothering this person. They don't really exist. Whatever lie it is that we feel like we need to feed ourselves that day. So we went ahead and developed another category for that individual, and it's called our follow-up category, which is our archive. And in our archive, we have them go through the 21 days of gain. So it's a course of systematically touching them over 21 days through text messages, phone calls, and emails, depending if we have their email address. So we have developed templates for this. Templated calls, scripts, right? Templated emails, scripted text messages. And we have done it in an automated way with our CRM so that as I make a call attempt number 1, they don't answer, the next task is populated to complete the following day or 2 days later, whatever it is for that 21 days of gain. Okay. So I have to really, really stress here, the more you follow scripts and the more that you template some of your follow-up systems, the easier it's actually going to be for you to achieve it. The other thing too that I like to point out For those of you who might not be using their CRM at a high level or might not be using an auto dialer, when you use an auto dialer in your CRM, oftentimes you don't know who you're calling. And I know some of you right now are thinking, God, that sounds like a nightmare, Katie. That's exactly why I don't use an auto dialer. I don't want to call and not know who I'm calling. Okay. Here's what I mean by that. When you have your auto dialer hooked up, it's just ringing and ringing and ringing. You don't even hear it because it's completely silent. You only hear once it answers. As soon as it answers, you see who it is that answered on the screen, and you have their information in your CRM adjacent to it. My point is, when you have it in an auto dialer and you don't know who you're calling at that given moment, you don't allow yourself to tell yourself things like, oh gosh, I'm bothering this person. Oh man, I'm calling this person and I feel really guilty about it and weird because they haven't answered, or they did answer. We had a good conversation and now they're not picking up my phone calls and now I feel rejected. So I'm just going to ignore them, right? An auto dialer does help alleviate that, because you don't, as long as you're just calling your to-dos that day, all your tasks that are set for that day to call, you don't really know who you're calling at any given time. So you don't allow that type of mindset to creep in, which really helped me as well in that. Okay, so we're talking about number one, making it easy. Number two, you have to have it organized. So I would really, really recommend that you use a CRM at a high level. And here's the general rule we have with our CRM. Every single lead in our CRM has to have a follow-up task assigned to it. Every single lead. I'm just going to say it again. Every single lead in our CRM has to have a follow-up task associated with it. There has to be a to-do set, a task set, whatever you want to call it. Otherwise, why are they in your CRM? If you're not working them in some capacity, why are they there? Right? Okay, guys, let me break it down for you even further. You've got your database, your sphere, your past clients, your friends and family. They're on a 33 touch. So they're going to have a task set every month for that person. It could be an email, it could be a call, it could be newsletter goes out. That's their task list. That's your database. Then you have your pipeline component of your CRM. Those are leads that you're cultivating, whether or not you're outbound calling and finding for sale by owners and putting them in, or inbound leads, whether it's you've paid Zillow and you're getting leads coming in from that type of lead source. Every single lead person should have a task associated with them. The other thing that we like to really mandate in our organization piece of our follow-up is we have to have an extreme sense of clarity around what we're going to do with this person, right? So, for example, we have, through our own auditing and our own growth and learning, recognized that we have probably trashed a lot of leads that should not have been trashed, simply because in the beginning, when we were calling and doing follow-up, we would make a few attempts and then quit and say, oh, that lead's no good anymore. They never answered the phone, and we'd throw them away. So now we have much higher standards around who we actually trash versus who we keep working with, right? So for us to trash a lead, they have to actually talk to us and tell us, don't call me. I am a licensed agent. Or, I hate you. If you call me again, I'm going to report you or something, right? Those are the leads that we will trash. Everything else continues to be worked, right? So we have different follow-up programs, like I mentioned earlier, for the different segments of our pipeline. If we call and we put someone through the 21 days of gain and they still don't answer, we'll move them out and we'll put them in another category, and we still call through at least twice a month to try to get them back on. And a lot of times when we have new agents, those are some of the leads that we give them first to work. To see if they have any abilities to kind of resurrect that lead, so to speak. Okay, so make it easy. Come up with templates, scripts, right? A lot of us stop dead in our tracks because we don't know what we're going to say. There's tons of scripts that are incredibly beneficial to use. Like I mentioned earlier, I always want to leave a voicemail that's got a call to action in it, so they'll call me back and let me know one way or another if they're still interested or not. So make it easy. You've got to do it consistently. So you've got to be organized. It's going to be really, really beneficial if you have a CRM that allows you to follow up with it to make sure that you're hitting all of the appropriate follow-up tasks that you need to be hitting. Sorry about that, guys. So the other key thing too, when you make follow-up calls is, like I mentioned in the very beginning, stagger it. Change the times of days that you're doing it, especially if you're doing follow-up calls for people that have already answered the phone, right? So you want to work smarter, not harder. I talked to you earlier about the best times of day to call are between 8 and 9 a.m. and between 4 and 6 p.m. And then the best days of the week are Wednesdays and Thursdays. So let me give you some more clarity on this. If I'm organizing my day of calls, I will probably do my first thing in the morning expired calls at 8 a.m. Now, in the city of Austin, I don't know about you all, we don't have a ton of expires every day. We used to. Anyways, so I get through those calls. We'd get through them pretty quick. And so in that still 8 to 9 a.m. block, who I'm calling most likely next is going to be nurtures, people that I've already spoken to that have met my 5 criteria that say, yeah, I'm interested in selling, want to do it in the next 12 months, motivated and not working with a realtor, right? Here's my contact information and call me back in 6 weeks. Seller directed follow-up. They'd meet my 5 nurture criteria and they're in my nurture segment. I will put them in to call first thing in the morning, right after my expireds, because I want that 8 to 9 a.m. window, right? I want to have a high contact rate with that individual. They are a greater lead for me. Then once I get through that and I want to start making circle prospecting calls, I'll do that. And if I have 21 days of gain calls, I'll do those between 4 and 6 often, or I'll just switch it up. Sometimes I'll do them in the mid-afternoon, and then other days I'll do the next call attempt later in the day, right? So for my call to action, I saw one of you wrote in, had a question. A lot of times what I do, especially for my 21 days of gain people, the ones who've never answered the phone, I'll leave a message that's somewhat of an apology. Like, hi, this is Katie Collins, real estate professional in your area. The reason I'm calling is I have your information in my system and I want to make sure that I'm not dropping the ball on my end. Could you please give me a call back today by 5 p.m. so I can know whether or not we're able to help you, right? A lot of times I find that if I give them a timed action of like, hey, call me back at this time, it encourages them to respond. But also just this whole checking in with your level of interest, right? I want to make sure you didn't fall through the cracks here. Another way I say that too is I always do the same opening bit of I have your information in my system. I want to make sure you're not slipping through the cracks. So I want to follow up and determine your level of interest. Could you please give me a call back today to let me know whether or not you want me to continue to follow up? Right? Crazy. I just ask them, do you want me to continue to follow up with you? But a lot of times they're going to be more inclined to tell me one way or another because they feel like I am trying to make sure they're taken care of. I want to make sure I'm not dropping the ball on my end. Another script that a lot of us like to use is, hey, I just saw your information come through in our system. And this is predominantly more so for like buyers that we get the leads for, like from Zillow or things like that. And we'll say, hey, I just saw that we got your information in our system. And I just wanted to reach out to you and talk to you about what you're looking for. I think we've got a lot of options for you. If you could give me a call back today by 5, I'd like to speak with you about those options. So again, we're just creating a bit more urgency around it with those individuals by giving them a timed response. What would you suggest is a reasonable amount of calls, not with dialer for an ISA to make it a 4 to 5 hour time period with it? Not with a dialer? Oof. All right, guys, just so you know, we had a question. What would you suggest is a reasonable amount of calls, not with dialer, for an ISA to make in a 4 to 5 hour time period with a consistent 20% contact rate? Okay, so let me unpack this question and explain to you why it's challenging to answer it. One, we only use dialers on my team, so a lot of my statistics are all based on dialers. Two, it's hard to tell you a consistent 20% contact rate without better knowing your lead source. So here's what I mean by that. If I'm calling my sphere, I have all their correct phone numbers. They know me, they see my number, they're going to answer it. It's going to be a higher answer rate than me circle prospecting phone numbers I bought from cold directory, half of which might not be good numbers. See what I'm saying? Um, so it's just going to depend more so on who they're calling to tell you a reasonable amount of calls. I mean, if you're burning and turning it and you're on an auto dialer, you're doing like 300 dials a day, 350. I'd have to say you'd be doing at least half of that. Gosh, that's hard to say. It's going to depend too, like I said, on the lead source as well. But yeah, that's a great question. I'd like to talk to you more about it. Um, which reminds me, we have a link here for strategy sessions. This is a perfect example of a question type that would be good for that. Um, so it's going to be, oh, sorry, I started reading another question. I was going to say, so contact us at the strategy session so I can learn more about your specific situations. All the leads are OHT or previous call-ins that aren't converted. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk offline on that some more, just so I have like 7 more questions I want to ask you essentially. Okay. But that's a great example. So guys, these webinars our intention behind these are to give you some more insight and information into how to be successful in making calls to convert business. And yet we know everybody's business is very unique to their own. So if you're interested in finding out some more information in our coaching program, please sign up for our strategy sessions. You'll speak to a coach like myself or some other coaches on our team. And it's a free 20-minute, 30-minute strategy session where we can help you with something specific that you're looking for guidance on. As well as if you're interested in our coaching program, it's a great opportunity for us to give you more information there as well. Okay. What script do you use to engage old and cold leads that have gone years without any communication? It's a great question. For those scripts, it just depends on what the lead type is. If they were, for example, somebody like an old nurture that I spoke to and they kind of just went dry on me, I would just call in and say, hey, this is Katie. We spoke last year. I know at that time, and I would just refer to my notes. I know at that time you're looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and I was following up to see what's changed in your world since then. Very open-ended response there. No. Are you still looking? Yes, no, right? Especially if they were a previous nurture that I had a good conversation with that seemed like a really solid, viable lead. I really want to create an opportunity to have more dialogue with them, essentially. Okay. I struggle with personal scripts for reaching out with text messages. I like to sound genuine and it feels disingenuous to be texting. Lisa, okay, cool. I'm a talker. I like to text, but I prefer talking on the phone with clients myself. However, what I have found is that not everybody wants to talk. Other people just want to text, especially if you have a lead that responds via text. It's going to benefit you to go to that medium of communication and text back with them. So I would basically, what I'll tell you is just don't overthink the texting piece. And if your goal is to get them on the phone and have a conversation, it might be, hey, just want to follow up and see when you're available to chat more about what you're looking for, or depending on what the lead is. But it's if you prefer being on the phone and that's your goal is to get them back on the phone, I would use the text as a way to schedule a time to get them back on. If it's pretty clear that they're big into texting, that's fine. Your goal is to set an appointment with them and get them face to face so that you can make sure that you're having an authentic relationship with them and that you're not just going to start showing them houses without knowing that they really want to buy, right? So it's just about segueing it into either a phone call or a meeting, depending on what that lead's readiness is, essentially. But you're probably beating yourself up too much about the script for the text message, really and truly. Okay, and we have tons of different scripts and stuff within our coaching program as well that we utilize that we find to be really beneficial. All of the scripts that we have in our program are proven scripts that my team, the horror group, different teams across the country have used and seen success with. So we have that as a resource as well. Okay, all leads. Let me see. Okay, all right. So I think I've answered all the questions that have popped up in our chat box. Just remember, guys, follow-up does pay off. Most agents do not follow up past call attempt number 2. If you can commit yourself to following up, you're going to set yourself apart from so many other real estate agents. If you keep talking yourself out of following up with people, ask yourself why that is and what specifically can you do to change that. For me personally, it's about creating organization and making it as easy as possible for me to do it. And then daily affirmations, really and truly. When I make calls, I often tell myself things like, some people need me, some people don't, so what, right? So that way I don't get all beat up about rejection or get frustrated, essentially. Okay. Um, oh, do your ISAs have access to the entire database, including past clients? Yes and no. So we will do database calls. We only call them about 4 times a year, maybe 6 times now I think about it. And when we do that, we turn it on so that they can call them. But typically we have so many outbound and inbound leads for them to work that we try to get our agents to work the database, their segment of the database. But if there's overflow, then they can get the ISA to work it as well. That's just how we do it. I know a lot of other teams have their ISAs work the database right along with Zillow leads and all their other lead sources as well. Essentially, what you want to ask yourself is, at the end of the day, are all my leads being worked to the highest extent possible? And if they're not, ask yourself why. Why are they not? And what can I do to change that? And if it means that you're going to assign some of your database to your ISA so that it gets worked, it's better than not calling it at all by yourself. That's how we look at it. Some will, some won't. So what? That's right. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, guys. Thank you guys so much for today's call. Sorry again. I'm on Benadryl and Dayquil and all the quills. So I really appreciate your questions on today's call. If you have more questions for us, please sign up for a strategy session. Check out our coaching program. If you're interested to learn more, reach out via the link, and we'll be happy to help you any way that we can. I hope you guys have a great Wednesday, and look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thanks.